Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis, coming to you from Sya Academy, and I am playing some Taj Mahal into Mani Jabate on my phone here to bring us into that bluesy mood that is associated with this new movie here, Sinners. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. But everyone has been discussing this movie, and it's a powerful film. I know a lot of people have heard that it's about vampires, and I'm sure that, I think I concur with many of those who saw the movie that this movie was a movie that had vampires in it. This is not a movie about vampires. It's a very interesting piece that Zinzi and Ryan Coogler pulled together. They had to do there's a lot of historical information that illuminates throughout this piece, broadening the relationships between multiple ethnic groups, and how there was this convergence of experience in the Mississippi, in the Clarksdale area. And so you have a theme of World War I veterans who were the twins in the movie, and their knowledge of their military skills. You have the experiences of the Choctaw. You have the Choctaw indigenous people, First Nations people who were in this piece. You have Chinese Americans who had, I didn't realize how long, I knew they've been here since Reconstruction, but who had been here since the 1830s. You have the Irish who were migrating over here in the 1840s, and of course you have the African Americans who were, these were African Americans who were sharecroppers and were still struggling in this period piece of 1932. So you see all of these groups intersecting with each other. And, this is the time of a great deal of violence, continued violence of white Americans against all of these communities. But I just want to jump in. I want to start with, the Choctaw, because, this is Turtle Island, and, these are original people. And then I will go through like I said, each other group, but as they enter the picture here. So the people, the other thing I wanted to mention is that at the beginning of the movie, it does nod the through line of the Chinese, the indigenous Choctaw, and the African American experience, the Irish, not the Chinese, the Irish spiritual experiences, and as it related to music. And so I do want to make that note. But since the story begins, like I said, in America, I wanted to first talk about the Choctaw. So the Choctaw of Mississippi, according to MississippiChoctaw.org, they lived in Alabama and Mississippi, and they can be dated back to 18,000 BC. So they've been here for a long time. BC, and I think that's where they found archaeological evidence that shows that they had been in this space for a long time. And then the group was also part of the Trail of Tears. And so the people who are portrayed in this movie, the Choctaw people in this movie takes place in 1932. So these are the descendants of the ones who refused to join the Trail of Tears, and probably had to hide and, were undercover for a long time. But these are the ones that refused to join the Trail of Tears. And like I said, they've been in the Delta region since 18,000 BC. They were under constant siege by the British or what we would call the English, for slaves. So in 1690s, they were being raided for slaves and also land seizure. So they were under a great deal of duress from these Europeans. Um, it the Choctaw were it took them until what 1934 to be recognized as um, a their own entity as a nation within a nation. And the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians Constitution was ratified in 1945. And 11,000 Choctaw are still living in Mississippi, and own 34,000 acres of land. That's all they've got is 34,000 acres of land. Now, the interesting dynamic between the Irish and the Choctaw is the Choctaw were in the midst of 1847 when they were going through the Trail of Tears. The English in America, I mean, no, in England were also terrorizing there was the Great Famine among the Irish, and the Choctaw, this right in the middle of their famine, in the middle of their suffering on the Trail of Tears, raised $170, which would have been the equivalent of about $6,000 today, to support the Irish during this horrible time. And so it created an alliance between the Choctaw and the Irish, even that still stands today. They support each other. They've been in alignment and with each other on various issues. But that was forged in 1847. So that's also an interesting fact that is brought here. And in the movie, when you see this vampire, he is Irish descent, and so it's interesting that something must happen, but maybe one of the reasons why he was able to even get into the Choctaw space is because he was Irish, and they were like, "Oh, welcome," and then they were like, "Oh no, oh no, you got to go." But anyway, I don't want to give away all of the details of the movie, but that was an interesting thing that he had there, and so that's the history of the Choctaw. So the next thing I wanted to say is that enslaved Africans, um, up until 1795, this area was owned by Spain. Louisiana, Mississippi, all from Georgia all the way across. And you have to remember, we had the Haitian Revolution and France. So France and all those people owned this land. So what happened was that when they had the Louisiana Purchase, up until then, there could be no slavery in those areas because they did not belong to the United States. But once the United States got that land, they decided, okay, the Pinckney Treaty was signed between the U.S. and Spain, which gave the U.S. control of Florida all the way to Louisiana. And this is when the plantation owners who had depleted the soil of Virginia, North Carolina, they a lot of times we don't know, why did they keep moving out west? Why did they keep expanding? Why did these white folks have to keep going? It was because they had overused the land. And this is the history of the West. When they went to Portugal, they were trying to plant sugar cane, they abused the land. And then they overused the land, and there was no, just absorbed all the nutrients. And then they had to move to another place, and they had to move to another place. And so their trek around the world has literally been in search of resources or places where they could grow something, and then they would destroy the earth. They would not, over just abuse the soil, extract all the nutrients. This is why George Washington Carver became such an important figure in the South, because he was like, look, y'all, we have got to rebuild. I mean, you have to replenish the soil. You just have to. And that's the reason why we have soybeans and all of these things, because they're legumes and they release nitrogen back into the soil. But before I go there, I wanted to show you all some pictures of the Choctaw. This is a Choctaw man. And this is an old picture of the Choctaw people. And huh, I was like, okay, okay, okay. These are some more pictures of Choctaw, indigenous Choctaw. They are some dark people. But see, the closer you get to that equator, the browner you're going to get. Because I'm not going to get into that conversation about Black people being here first. I think it was Black Indians who were Indians and not Africans. And so, they're just dark brown. But anyway, so what in let's see. So what happened was, you had all of these Africans that were brought to from North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland. These plantation owners started leaving the East Coast and to Mississippi and Louisiana so they can continue to grow their cotton. Now, these rich people, like I said, they're the worst people on the planet, and they were destroying the Choctaw. But the economy of 1836, in 1836, they said King Cotton was $71 million, which would be the equivalent of $2 trillion today. And so, but eventually they depleted the soil there, destroying ecosystems and the people who live there. And but the reason why I want to focus on Louisiana is because I want to pull this thread between them and the blues. So Clarksdale was Mississippi is the home of the blues, and it's also the home of rock and roll. So they when this plantation owners start going into Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi and all those places, they also continued the slave trade into that area. And so slave trade was still operating in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And so who were they bringing? So I found this book, Michael Gomez, his book. The book is called Exchanging Our Country Marks by Michael Gomez. And in this book, he has a map. And if you can't see it too closely, but you can see that these are all of the countries where people were brought: Sierra Leone, West Central Africa, the Bight of Benin, the Bight of what is that? The Bight of Biafra, Gold Coast, and Senegambia. And this is where they were taken. And so you see Louisiana, Mississippi. So you have all of this convergence of these people being brought into this area. And so when you think about the music, that's the space where the blues evolved. So that means these people were coming in with their ngonis, which I've talked about in the past. You got their kora, their knowledge of drumming and all of that. And the blues was literally created in a space that was inundated with Black folks from all over, all along the Atlantic coastline, from Mali all the way to Angola and the Congo. And so just inundated with that. And so this blues music is a creation that emerged out of that, and indigenous traditions. And I will say that the harmonica was created by a white German guy in 1820, and he invented this harmonica, which was supposed to be a mouth organ or something like that. But it was the blues singers and musicians that brought that harmonica to life. So a German did invent it, but it was definitely the Africans who made it a popular instrument for people to use, and it is directly associated also with blues, just like the banjo. The banjo is an evolution of the ngoni. And I know, we got thumb pianos, we got all kinds of instruments that are used as part of the of the blues. But anyway, but the Bida Benin is Benin, Burkina Faso, Nigeria. Gold Coast is going to be Ghana, Ivory Coast and Togo. Senegambia, that's going to be Senegal, Gambia, and Guinea. Sierra Leone, and that's going to be Liberia too. And West Central Africa, that's going to be Angola, Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, Sao Tome. The Bida Biafra would be Congo, Gabon, and DRC. And these were the new Africans who intermingled with the older Africans, and I believe that created this blues music, and maybe even integrating the Choctaw people or the indigenous instruments. So we have, I was going to show a couple of the musicians that were considered the founders of this music. Oh, come on now. Let's see. Oh, that's the Ngoni that I was talking about, and that looks just like the banjo. And then this is Little Walter, and I think he's the one that popularized the harmonica, and that's Jackie Brunston, and he and Ike Turner were the ones that are known for creating um, uh, um, rock and roll. And so my next thing, so you have this multi-ethnic group of Africans, and and that's the reason why I had this particular music on. This particular music is that Samani Jabate and Taj Mahal playing blues music together. We know about Taj Mahal; he's a famous blues musician. But I said, okay, I know where I could get some more information about that. And so the next other theme that was in there or in the movie was hoodoo. And so according to Professor Thoreau's academic hoodoo is an African American spiritual system, and it is grounded in African traditions, but it's not necessarily African because it also includes indigenous practices here. And let's see, it says that it makes use of natural and supernatural elements in order to create and effect change in the human experience. It is not necessarily religion, but it could be. But it doesn't adhere to tenets of faith. It's not a doctrine necessarily, but it definitely focuses on harmony and balance, justice and order, truth and righteousness, and reciprocity and prosperity. If you're operating in this Ma'at worldview with nature, so it's not an organized religion, but it's more of a way of living, and a compilation of respect for the environment, interacting with nature, and creating prayers extracting prayers from the Bible, the Quran, Ifa, and other indigenous spiritual systems, because it's just God is in everything and God is everywhere. So there's a character in this movie who is a hoodoo practitioner, and it's very interesting the way that you see her using what stones and leaves and fibers and all of these natural resources to manipulate energy, and and it's a protection over folks. So and there is a dark side to hoodoo, like there is a dark side to most spiritual systems, and this is that people also use this to create chaos and confusion. And so we know that's what folks do. But anyway, so the other theme I wanted to talk about was the World War II vets, World War One, and World War One. We have to remember 1917. And so I have always been intrigued by the way that Africans, that the European colonial powers would ask their colonial servants to join them in World War One. And, it was one thing because, folks from Ghana were speaking, the Twi and Fanti and, all of this. And the folks from, Hong Kong, where they're speaking, in China, we're speaking Mandarin and all this stuff. But they all could speak English. So you had people from India coming, you had people from Africa coming, you had people from China coming from. So wherever the British laid their hands and brought their people, these people all came to serve. But what they also did is start talking to each other. They're like, whoa, we both speak English. We all look the same, but we supposed to be, so what is your experience? And what is your experience? And what is your experience? And within 30 years, folks were getting their liberation. By the time they went back for World War II, Hong Kong, China was fighting for their liberation. India, all these places, Africa, all of these places, these people won that war for the British, and then they went home and fought for their own independence. And by 1960, most countries by the 1960s, most countries had managed to get their liberation from the Europeans. But I'm like, okay, so that must have been, the start of it. Unfortunately, when about 380,000 African Americans also participated in this war. We didn't get there. Most of the other colonies started in 1914, but African Americans did not get to go join the war until 1917. And they were only there a very short period of time. But they too were benefiting from being in a collective with these other states, nation states that were also being controlled under the British control. So of course, when they came back with a whole attitude. And so the twins who are in the main characters in this in this presentation, are World War I veterans. And when you understand that they had just come from overseas, engaged with people who were also under colonial power, fighting for these colonial powers, and having like, wait, what am I doing here? I'm fighting for them, but shouldn't I be fighting for myself? And so that was just amazing how that happened. And so that to me helps you understand who these characters are, who these men are in this particular present in this theatrical piece, this movie. Who are these Black men? So that gives you a little insight to who they are and why their whole countenance and their attitude and their movement in this space is totally different from other people. And so these people who fought valiantly for Europe were like, wait, I'm getting ready to fight valiantly for myself. And now the Chinese Americans. So what is interesting about the Chinese Americans came to the United States in the 1830s. They ended up in Mississippi in the 1860s because Africans were now emancipated, and so they were seeking laborers to come in to Mississippi to work on these cotton plantations. So, and I forgot to mention that even the Irish were working on those cotton fields as early as 1847, and the Chinese were working in those cotton fields as early as the 1860s. And so there was this attachment to cotton that I didn't realize was among both the Irish and the Chinese. That was, completely an African American experience for those who lived in that area. So that was interesting. And so Chinese people have been in this country for about 195 years. So when people are saying, go back to your land, I'm like, y'all, some of them have been here longer than these white folks. They need to stop talking to folks. But anyway, so the Chinese were there. And so what's interesting about that is, so you have Ryan Coogler has by 1932, which is when this period piece is written, and that era, you have people now who have been living in these communities for almost 100 years. It's for the Chinese in the South, in those southern communities, that they were at least two, three generations, or at least two generations have been in that area, maybe three, when you consider their children. And then you also have the Irish who've been in Mississippi for all this time, and Clarksdale. And then you have these black soldiers who were the descendants of these enslaved people. And so you have all of these people and their relationship to whiteness, because you have to remember also Irish working. They said that the poorest people in America were African Americans, but below the African Americans were the Irish. So the Irish were actually below the African Americans. Now the Chinese people, what happened when they got here, one of the reasons why they were so hated by white people is that they started off as laborers, but because they weren't enslaved and they didn't have that relationship, they were poor in China, and they were coming over here to create a better life. So they just got busy. As soon as they got here, they started creating their own little industries and their own little stores. I'm trying to think, do I have a picture of a store that they had here? This is Berlin or Bust. This is the Africans or fighting in World War One, and this is 1918. Uh, these are some Chinese men working on the railroad in the 1800s. And they were very much involved. And this is a grocery store in Mississippi Delta. Chinese people. Been there for a whole minute. Oh, and there's the hoodoo picture of hoodoo stuff. And and this is the Great Famine. What's crazy about the Great Famine is that these Europeans, England was rough. England, the British created this famine or exacerbated it by the potatoes that were infected, and the potatoes were brought from America to Ireland and infected those potatoes, and so it destroyed the whole crop. And England was still trying to control, not trying, they were controlling the Irish. So while in the midst of this famine, while the Native Americans in the midst of their famine and their poverty and their trail of tears was given money, the English were told those Irish they better not catch them fishing in their own water. Ireland is an island. They could not fish in their water, and they couldn't, and then they were also forced to continue to supply England with wheat and oats. So Britain, the English are something, and so that's the energy that you see that's presented in this movie as well. That you know they ain't our friends, they ain't your friends, they ain't nobody's friends. And so I thought that was a very powerful um, aspect of this movie. But Ryan and Zinzi Kugler, they it's obvious that they did a lot of research, or they had people on their staff do a lot of research, but apparently obviously they initiated it. They said, we want to know the history of this space in Clarksdale. We want to know the relationships between people in these spaces. Why were these people here? What did they want for themselves? How did they interact with each other? And we know that there's always been a racial um, tension between different ethnic groups, but all of them had issues. All of them had issues with this white supreme stupidity that we have in this country. And when you just imagine that nobody liked England, nobody liked the English because of the stuff that they had done to everybody. And so that's my perspective of, or my that was the rabbit hole I went down after seeing Sinners. And I really hope everybody goes out and sees this movie. The movie is very powerful, and you will learn a lot. And whatever you see, you too should go and do your own research and find out what is that particular uh, information. What is that particular thing that has got my brain ticking here? What is that, and what else can I learn about that? And just do your research, learn. Ashe, ashe. My daughter's outside. Thanks to my mama and my daddy. I forgot to do that.
My darling baby, my Creole girl, when the stars do shine, I'm gonna make her mine. My darling baby, my Creole girl, I've got a house in the country, got a garden out back. Robert Johnson on the Victory Road. What do you think of that? Ooh, sweet darling, come down and home. My darling baby, my Creole girl. My Creole girl, I love her well. My darling baby, my Creole girl, when stars do shine, make her mine. My darling baby.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Sya student.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Sya student.